webinar today. So we're going to be looking at setting up and processing in Sage 50 Cloud accounts. We have scheduled in a part 2 session as well. Part 2 is available to register for now, and I'll tell you more about that a little bit later on. It's quite a big topic, Charities, so I don't want to overcomplicate things. We are on hand, and I've got a couple of my colleagues joining us today. So we've got Dimi, and also Tim will be joining us, and they'll be on hand to answer any questions that you might have. So the session should last, demo-wise, probably in the region of about half an hour. Again, I don't want to go too in-depth to it because there's lots of information readily available within our help center to guide you through the more of the detail within there. Right, okay. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Again, if you've attended a webinar before, you'd be familiar with this. So your microphone, you don't need a microphone for these sessions. If you've got one, if you enable one, it will be muted automatically. So any questions you have, you'll not be able to verbally ask them, but you will be able to type them into the questions panel. You should see that in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you can't currently see it, just on your toolbar, you just need to click the little icon, the one that looks like this little speech bubble containing the question mark, and you can hide that option at any time. You can also download a copy of today's slides, so that's via the handouts little icon. A lot of people do ask for that. Again, there's not a great level of detail on the handouts, and that's because, again, the most up-to-date information is in the help center. So if you're going to refer to anything detail-wise, that's where you need to head. There is also an option to switch to full screen mode. So again, if you've attended webinars before, you'll know we like to share our desktops as much as possible. It may just make things that little bit clearer when you do join. Right, okay, now just before we get started, I will show you the contents, but I want to run a quick poll just before I run through this, and I'll quickly pop the poll on your screen. So a quick question: do you currently use the Charities module in Sage 50 Cloud accounts? Just a simple yes and no. I'll just wait till quite a few of you have voted for that, till we get a decent percentage of you. I'll share the results with you as well. Just gives us a little bit of an idea of the background, just so who's coming along today. If you've not seen it before as well, again, it's I suppose today's session is more of an introduction to the Charities module. I'm sure many of you are using it already. Looks like some of you are. And you probably have some detailed questions as well. For your detailed questions, obviously, we're not going to be able to delve in any depth into the Charities module. So you often find that if you've got detailed queries, you're much better off speaking to our support team so they can look at your questions on an individual basis. All right, let me just close that poll at that point. And as I suspected, and you should see the results on your screen, we've got what? 25% of you are using the Charities module currently, and 75% currently aren't. So we're going to show you the basics in today's. Let's get back to this slide showing what we're going to be covering. So a little bit about what's different. We'll then run through a bit of a demo, how you go about enabling the Charities module, and the options that you then have available. So we're going to be looking at funds, the sofa categories, where you'll see those, where they're set up, if needed, how you can edit them. We'll look at entering transactions. Very little changes in respect of that. We'll look at the sofa report that you've got available, where you would run that. But also there is a little change to the year-end process. Not how you run it, but a little change to what actually gets posted as part of that year-end. As normal, we will explain a little bit about the additional support that's available, upcoming webinars, etc. And a quick note at the bottom there. I think this one did mention, certainly mentions donations on the invite, but we're going to cover gift aid in Charities Part 2. So if you all want to register for that one, so we'll be covering donations, gift aid, flagging your donors in a bit more detail, the gift aid small donation scheme as well. That's the plan. We're going to cover all of that in Charities Part 2. So that one, the link to register for that session will be included on your follow-up email. Right, so that's our running order. Hopefully that will take us hopefully we'll manage to get that done within the half hour. Right, okay. So again, keep your questions coming. We've got Tim and Dimi on hand to answer your questions. They'll either just answer your query or point you in the right direction, maybe provide a link to the relevant Help Centre articles. So keep your questions coming. So a little bit about what's different first of all. So obviously as a charity, you're going to have different reporting requirements. So you've got the charitable funds module available within CH50 Cloud accounts. Now, it's not available if you're on the Essentials level of the software. That's something to be aware of, just in case anyone is using Essentials. If you are and you needed the charitable funds area, then you would need to upgrade to one of the higher levels. So 2 higher levels available at the moment, the Standard Edition and also the Professional Edition. So you'll have the options that we're going to cover in the session today then available to you. And obviously all of your data, etc., that will be transferred for you. Obviously, the charitable funds option to help you with your reporting requirements. Obviously, it's going to include a number of reports and a number of options which we're going to run through in today. And obviously, to run some of those reports, you're going to need to use features such as the funds option, the sofa categories, and gift aid. Gift aid, obviously, I mentioned, we're going to cover in the part 2 session. Now, to enable the Charities module, I'll just bring up my full slide there. You can do that in one of 2 places. One is when you're creating a new company. So when you're adding a new company, it's one of the business types that you'll have available is charity. Again, you'll not get that if you're on the Essentials level of the software. And also the other one is to go into settings, company preferences, parameters, and then you have a little checkbox to enable the option. So let me just quickly show you that one. So you should see my desktop at that point. So we're going to pop into settings, into company preferences, just ask me to re-enter my password. Then on the parameters tab, you've got this option here. Actually, I'll just switch project costing off just to stop the distraction of that one. But we've got enable charity / non-profit options. By ticking that box and clicking OK, that's the option there, the charitable funds option. So that's where you would see that. Now, it is often recommended as well when you're setting up the charities module that you do this from either the start of a financial year. Let me just pop back to the slides a moment. Or even it's often recommended as well that you might even rebuild your data and almost like start again from scratch. Now, there is a great help article on this within our Help Centre, which will explain that in a bit more detail. Now, one thing I must mention as well, if I just quickly pop back to, I forgot to mention this one. If I just pop back to my desktop very quickly, if you enable that charitable funds option or you're told it's enabled, maybe you're not sort of the data owner as it were, or the manager, you don't have access to the manager logon. So if that is enabled and you can't see that option, it's going to be for one of 2 reasons. One is your level of access. So your logon name, the access rights linked to that, doesn't have access to it, or you may have the option switched off. So this is an option that I always like to mention because a lot of people are aware of these options. And when I say you've got it switched off, is you've got the option hidden. So if you right click anywhere on your toolbar, this goes for toolbars within different modules as well, where you've got your icons along the top, it will give you a list of the options that you can show or hide. So you might find that the charities option is actually switched off. So do check if it's not there and you've been told it is switched on, just in case of right clicking, should be on the list, the options that you've got access to or your user has access to, and then you've got that option available. And we're coming into the charities module in just a few minutes. Right, let's quickly pop back to the slides, and we're going to start looking at some of the options that you've got available. So the first area that we are going to look at with you is the funds themselves. Now, when creating funds, so essentially setting up a record for your various charitable funds, I suppose one of the key options is the type. There'll be 3 to choose from, so you will need to choose one of them. There's unrestricted, restricted and endowment. We've got the classifications there on the slide as well. And all this information obviously is included in the Help Centre on the various articles that are available as well. You should be able to, when you get to that screen as well, if you are setting it up, just click on the help option and it would take you into the relevant screen. Now, the nominal code, this is quite an important thing, this one. It must be in the capital and reserve section. So essentially your fund that you're setting up is essentially going to be a balance sheet item. So the nominal code that you specify at this stage, it must be in the capital reserve section of your chart of accounts. And it will use that nominal code to clear down your values to when you run a year end. A lot of people get this confused at this point, and they will maybe pop in things like an income nominal code in there, so an income or expenditure nominal code, but it must be a nominal code in your capital and reserve section. Let me just quickly show you that one as well. So a couple of quick tips in this area as well. So if I just go back to my screen, and we're in the charitable funds option, and we've got three, well, I've got 3 funds set up already just to save me having to key new information in. But if we just go into this one as an example, brings up the same screen that we're just looking at. So it's got the fund number, so we'll allocate that automatically for you. Actually, it won't. Sorry, yes, it will. It will allocate that number automatically. I was getting confused with the name there. So it will allocate the number automatically. You'll need to pop in a name, the type. So this is where you would be able to choose either unrestricted, restricted, or endowment. It is just the 3 that you have access to. I'll just set that back to unrestricted. Your nominal code. So as I say, this must be a nominal code from the capital reserve section of your chart of accounts. So a balance sheet code. So generally that's going to be a nominal code within the 3,000 range if you're using this standard list of nominal codes. You've got an option to enter an opening balance as well, and obviously you can enter a contact and the institution if required. Now, if anyone needs to check the capital and reserve section within the chart of accounts, you just need to go into nominal codes, chart of accounts, select your layout that you're using, edit it, pop into your balance sheet, and you'll have the capital and reserve section. So these are the ranges that I've got set up. So it needs to be a nominal code that sits within one of those ranges, or maybe you've created a new nominal code. So 3,300, for instance, isn't included in there. If I've set that up separately, then I could have just add that in as a separate range. If anyone's never really covered chart of accounts before, wants more information about it, have a look at the webinar recordings. Links included on your follow-up email. So that's the basics of setting up a fund. So let's just go back to that screen. So I've got my 3 that I'm potentially going to be using in the session today. So nice and easy. Let's pop back to the slides for a moment. If I can find the right button. There we go. So we're going to quickly pick up on sofa categories next. Now, I don't want to go into the sort of the theory and the background behind this. If you need that information, again, it's all within the Help Centre. But sofa categories are set up by default. You'll find these available within settings and nominal defaults. I'll show you that one in just a moment. So these are your various categories that you're going to show income and expenditure against. There are 21 set up by default. You can amend the descriptions if needed, but they will have these default descriptions that you can see the majority of on the screen. Categories 1 to 10 relate to income, and 11 to 21 by default relate to expenditure. So let's just have a quick look at that area as well. If I just go back to my desktop. So again, just to show you that one, we're going to go into settings, and then you should have nominal default. So if you can't see nominal default, it's going to be down to your your level of access within the software. If you're logged in as manager or an administrator, then you will have full access, so it should be there. But if you go into settings, nominal defaults, it will list the sofa categories that are set up by default. So as I say, there's the 21, 1 to 10, again, are for income, and 11 to 21 related to expenditure. If you did need to rename one of them for whatever reason, just highlight it, click edit, and you'll be able to change the name of that. It's up to 60 characters as well, just before anyone asks that one. We always get asked that, and then I thought I'll just preempt that and see how many you could type in. So I was testing that earlier. It is 60 characters if you needed to amend it. Now, on the subject of SOFA categories, so we're still within charitable funds at the moment. Now, what you can do is you can assign nominal codes to SOFA categories. So what that will mean is, as you enter transactions, that income or the expenditure will essentially build up against that SOFA category by default, as long as there is a fund associated with the transaction as well. It's quite a, I suppose this is where, if anything, the complications. It's not just a case of entering a transaction against a nominal code. You've got to assign it to a fund as well. Just let me make sure I'm actually on the wrong screen here. So let me just bring up the slide again. So as I say, you need to assign your nominal codes, if needed, to SOFA categories. So you'll do this within the charitable funds, and it's just a case of using the assign nominal codes option. Now, you should only assign a nominal code, or only assign, sorry, profit and loss codes. You don't assign any balance sheet codes. So it's your income and expenditure codes that you would assign to a SOFA category. So the SOFA categories will be used when calculating your income and your expenditure for the various reports that you need to run. So profit and loss codes by default, 4,000 onwards. Again, you could refer back to your chart of accounts even if you weren't sure about that one. A lot of people, often what we find is that they will try and assign balance sheet codes to SOFA categories. And you shouldn't do that, just your profit and loss codes, if any. Now, you can assign nominal codes individually or in bulk. So you've got an option within the charitable funds area, and you've also got an option when editing a nominal code as well. So when you're going into a nominal record, you can do it on an individual basis there as well. Let me just show you these. So back to my screen. And still within the charitable funds area, we've got the assign nominal codes option at the top here. So that will give us the list of nominal ledger codes. Now, as I mentioned, it's only the profit and loss codes, your income and your expenditure codes, that you should assign a SOFA category to. Now, it's easy enough to do that. You can either come down, find the relevant code. So let me just find, say, nominal 4,000 as an example. So we got that one. It's already assigned a SOFA category, but obviously when you first come in, it's going to say none all the way down. So it'd just be a case of you selecting it, and you would have an option to assign the SOFA category. So if you just double click it, actually no, I don't need to do that one. Just click change, and it would ask me what SOFA category I want to assign to that, essentially. Similarly, I could highlight a number of them at the same time, and again, choose the option to choose the SOFA category that I want to assign to those nominal codes. So easily enough done. The other way you could do it, as I mentioned, was within nominal codes. And if we just go into new, and I'll bring up nominal 4,000. Actually, I'll scroll down and select it. That might be a bit easier. So if you will need to double click it as well. Something I sort of realized earlier this morning, that you need to double click it to be able to see your SOFA category. If you're creating a brand new nominal code, it doesn't give you the option to assign the SOFA category at that point. Now I have logged that as a request for change. So think, oh, it just makes it, it means there's an extra step involved. If you've got the charities option enabled, you've got to save the new nominal code and then go back into the record and then you can assign it. But it'd be nice to just do it there and then. So you've got that option, and again, you can come in and you can amend it if required. Right, okay, let's go back to the slides for a moment. Again, we can see we've got Tim and Dimmy on standby answering your questions. And again, I appreciate some of your questions will be very detailed. So again, I would encourage you, if you've got very detailed queries, it may be beneficial just to spend a little bit of time with one of the members of our support team just to discuss that in a bit more detail. We can make sure they can understand what it is that you need help with in detail. Right, okay, let's pop back to the slides again. Next, we're going to take a quick look at entering transactions. Now, entering transactions, well, actually all you've got really any different is the fund. So you've got a fund column. Now, the fund column will be available in most areas. So you're going to have it against, a batch invoice, batch credit for both on the customer side and the purchase side as well, the supplier side. You can do it when you're entering invoices within the invoices and credits module, and obviously when working within the bank when entering payments and receipts. Within bank, you will also have a donations option, and I'll quickly show you that one as well. Ruth, you mentioned asking about gift aid there. As you mentioned, we are going to be covering gift aid in part 2. So if anyone's got any queries on gift aid, setting up donors, sending out emails, the gift aid small donation scheme, that type of thing, if you hold those back, we'll try and pick them up in the part 2 session. Or if you need some advice on that one, really I would encourage you, if you need it before that session, get in touch with our support team. Right, okay, so entering transactions. So fund column available. Now, one thing to be aware of, and it comes back to what I was saying just a moment ago, is it's to do with 2 bits of information need to be specified for transactions to appear against a fund to be recorded. One is that you must specify a fund when you're entering the transaction, and it's got to be allocated to a profit and loss nominal code as well. So two conditions for it to appear against the fund's activity. There was an enhancement in 28.1 as well. I'm not sure if anyone came along to the webinars we were running on the what's new in version 28.1, but one of the big enhancements for 28.1 is when you come to import transactions, you actually have the ability to import the fund along with the transactional information now. So that's 28.1. If you do import transactions, make sure you've got all the latest updates installed, just so you've got that option available to you. I'm going to cover donations in a moment as well, because a donation, it actually posts 2 transactions. Right, okay, let's have a quick look at entering transactions. So back to my screen. Now, if we just go into customers as an example and choose a batch invoice, you'll see that we've got the additional fund column. Now again, just in case you're looking at that and you're thinking, well, I haven't got that option, even though the charitable funds option is there and it's switched on. There are some of these columns. If you right click on a column, there are certain options that you can show or hide. So for instance, if you don't use the extra reference field within the screen, you can say, right, well, I'll just switch that one off and hide it. So certain ones, if you right click, it will show you the ones that you can show or hide. So a fund is one of them. So just in case it's not there, that could be the reason why. In fact, it will be the reason why you've got it hidden for some reason. So easy enough, just enter your transaction as normal. So if we just take an example, we just choose that customer. I'll just accept the dates as they are. I'll pop a reference in there. We've got a profit and loss nominal code specified. We need to choose a fund. So we'll just choose that general fund. And we'll just say £100. And that's that transaction recorded. So nothing out of the ordinary. Sarah, your question there, what if a transaction in a nominal code covers more than one fund? If you need to split it, then all you would do, just like any other transaction for that matter, you would just break it down. So you could enter the same information on as many lines as you needed to and just specify a different fund. That would be no different to a standard transaction. You know, for instance, when you're entering a bank payment or a bank receipt and you need to split it between nominal codes, or maybe part of the expense, part of it's vatable, part of it's zero rated or exempt of VAT, you would split it in exactly the same way. So just enter them on the same screen and break it down. The key to, I suppose, grouping your transactions is that when you enter them, they are consecutive. They've got the same reference and they use the same date as well. So in this case, obviously same customer, date, reference, entered on the same screen. They're consecutive on the list. When you save that, essentially it would group it together. So it would be what you would term a grouped transaction. So that's how you would break that down if needed. Again, if you needed to split it between sofa categories. So sofa categories, so you can only have a nominal code assigned to one sofa category, but multiple nominal codes can be assigned to the same sofa category. So if you need to split it down between different sofa categories, you would have to have different nominal codes that you would assign to the relevant category, and you would split it that way. Apologies if that wasn't clear from when we were looking at assigning them earlier. So entering your transactions, really no different. A batch invoice, batch credits would be the same on the supplier side as well for recording expenses. If you needed to generate an invoice or a credit, just when we're adding one in, let's just choose that item. So you can see we've got there, we do need to drill down onto the item line. So when you're adding your items in, you can either, let's just maximize that screen. When you click on the relevant line of the invoice, you can either click the option at the top, view item, or just press F3, or click your little icon there. It will take you into the edit item line, and you've got the ability to specify the fund for that item line. Again, other than that, invoicing works in exactly the same way. Working in the banking area, so if we go into bank accounts, so again, standard sort of bank payment, no difference. With the addition, you've got that fund option, same for bank receipts. The only additional thing really that you will notice that any difference on is the donations option. So in the donations option, and again, I'm not covering gift aid or anything of that nature today. We will go into that in more detail in the part 2 session. So specify the customer in this case, choose your relevant nominal code. I'll pop in a quick reference. Actually, I might have used that earlier, so we'll just choose a random one just so you can see it. Choose the relevant nominal code. It's picked up 4,000 by default for me. And then I'll just choose that general fund again. And we'll say, I'll just say donation. And again, I'll pop in, what should we do this time? Let's put a random value in there just to make it stick out. Then I'll save that. Now, obviously, switching on the charitable funds option, it means that the donations option is going to be something that's new to you. So I'll just quickly show you what that looks like. When you post a donation, So this is the transaction here. I'm looking for the reference column. It was throwing me off a little bit. So there's the donation that I've just entered. Now, because I've recorded that donation against the customer, what it does is it generates an SI transaction, so equivalent of me entering a batch invoice against that customer and then recording an SR against it. So for that one donation, it is entering 2 transactions. Now, on the subject of transactions, and I want to quickly show you this because there will be times where you think, oh, I've entered that transaction, but I should have set up that fund, or maybe that fund, this you've needed to amend it, or you've allocated to the wrong fund. You can correct your transactions in the same way. Now, a quick question come through from Thomas there. I'll quickly pick that up. And Thomas is just mentioning, is there a report which would show which transactions haven't been assigned to a fund? So we're in the transactions list. And as you can see, we've got a list of our transactions just as normal, but you do have that extra fund column. So again, that's another one that will be displayed as a result of enabling the Charities module. I hope that makes sense. You can, of course, send that information to the likes of Excel as well. So if you want to sort it or start analyze the information in a bit more detail, just into transactions, send to Excel. You could even apply a filter beforehand if you needed to. But otherwise, that's where you'd find it. So actually, we'll just pick on this one as an example. So this one, transaction number 7, it's not assigned to a fund at the moment. So if we highlight that, we'll edit it. We'll need to edit the item line. So we edit that, and then you'll have the fund option, so you can choose at that point. Save your changes. And again, that's it done at that point. So it's now assigned to the fund. Just going back to charitable funds as well, very quickly. If we go into charitable funds, we'll just pick on this one that we've been using quite a bit of in the session today. You can have a look at the activity. So you don't double click the record itself as you would for like a customer or a supplier or a nominal and then have a look at the activity. Just select it on the list into the activity and it will list the relevant transactions relating to that fund. Hope that makes sense. Right, 2 big areas left to cover. So I just pop back to the slides. Can't find the buttons today. Right. Okay, so next I want to quickly pick up on the SOFA report itself. So you do have a range of reports as you'd expect. So things like, you can run a report on the activity, etc. So within the charitable funds area, you do have a reports option. So the SOFA report, the Statement of Financial Activities report, it is required for reporting on the income and expenditure of your funds. And it's the kind of report that you would submit to the appropriate reporting body if your accounts are prepared on an accrual basis. Now remember, for a transaction to show on against your funds or on the SOFA report, so for them to be included, the transaction must have been assigned to a fund and also use a nominal code that is assigned to a SOFA category. So again, it's that almost that double up. So fund and a relevant nominal code. If it isn't, then it won't appear on the relevant report. So we'll quickly show you how to run that report. And also something that I fall foul of quite a bit as well is forgetting when I come into this area to make sure I've got nothing selected. As normal, when you go into run a report, if you've got anything selected, so if I leave that there, say this one selected only, for instance, if I go into run a report, got your charity reports area, and I run that SOFA report and preview it, you'll often find that, oh, where's all my values? So make sure either when you go into your charities module, that either you select everything, make sure you've got them all listed, or you click clear so that you've got nothing selected. And then when you go into your reports, run your reports, let's just preview it. Obviously, you can set your date range that you want to run it for, etc. Just okay that. It'll then pull the relevant information through for you. So don't get caught out with that one. I'm sure you've been caught out in the past in other areas as well, and you're thinking, why hasn't it pulled this customer through or this nominal code onto my report? So that's why. So that's the SOFA report. Do check out the reports that are available as well. And if there's anything as normal, if there's anything you need to maybe amend, you can always edit your reports. You can also get in touch with our support team, as we do have a report design service as well. But have a good look through them. You can't do any harm to your accounts by running reports. I always like to encourage people, rather than run through and say, this is what this report shows and so you run it, and this is what to look out for. Much easier, just have a good look through them, try them, see what's there. Can you get at the information you need? If you've got any queries then, excuse me, then obviously get in touch with our support team. Fiona, you mentioned that your SOFA report itself can sometimes take 15-20 minutes to run. It's not. I would probably say that's not unusual because it needs to look at individual transactions. If you've got loads of transactions assigned to funds, it's got to look at the individual transactions to build up the values. You compare that to, say, let's say a profit and loss report, for instance, just as an example. Profit and loss report, a lot of the calculations behind the scenes have been done for you. So the way it builds a SOFA report, it's got to look at individual transactions within the, within the sort of the date range that you've specified. But as I say, have a good look through the reports. Any that you do use, if you haven't come across it, nice simple feature, just click on the star. Just as an example, it'll just pop it into the favorites folder for you. Just means when you first come into reports. That goes for any other area of the software as well, where you're printing layouts or reports. Flag them as a star. When you go into that area, it'll default to the favorites folder and it'll list the ones that you've flagged. You can always unflag them as well. So nice, easy option, that one. Right, now I want to quickly go back to the year end, back to the slides again. So year end is something that you run it in the same way, but there is a difference. So the way that you run it and the options that are available when you do run it is going to be exactly the same. No difference in that respect. But there is a difference in the journals that are posted as part of that year end. So when you're running a charities enabled year end, then you're going to find more journals are actually posted. So in addition to balances that aren't associated with funds, they will be cleared down, but it will also look at the individual fund values as well, and it will post additional journals. So you can often find that, and this is a good example, as you can see on the screen there on that little screenshot, that there'll be repeat transactions. So you can see on that screenshot, this transaction 9, 10, 11, all used to clear down balances from against nominal code 4000. You can see there's a few based on my example as well, where balancing entries have been, in this case, there's 4 of them, based on 3,200. So additional balances are posted. I'm just going to quickly show you that as well. So quickly back into my screen. I'm just going to pop into year end. Incidentally, I am running I was going to say year end tomorrow, but it's actually a year end webinar next week. If anyone's not familiar with the year end process and wants to see that one in action, learn a little bit more about it, please get yourself signed up for that one as well. I don't specifically cover the charities aspect of that. It's more running through the year end process. But year end, we're just going to pop into tools, period end, and then year end. Just click yes to that prompt. And then as you can see on the year end wizard screen itself, there are actually no differences. So you just run through the standard year-end process. Let's just quickly run it. Obviously for yourselves, it's going to take a lot longer than mine. I've only got 12 transactions, so it's next to nothing. You probably enter more than 12 transactions within about 5 minutes of actually getting into the software for the very first time. So just click yes to that. Oh, I'll just change the archive folder. So I was playing with that one earlier, so it's already generated it. So I just click run year end, click yes to continue. I'll just preview the report that gets generated. So a bit like the one that you would have just seen on the slide a moment ago. So it's got my relevant transactions posted to clear down my year-end balances from against my profit and loss nominal codes just in the normal way. But you do get these additional postings because of the way it needs to clear your funds, the income and expenditure for your funds down as well. Now, one thing it doesn't mention on this report, and I tend to think it's a glaring omission when you've got the charities option enabled, is that it doesn't. There's a nice space there, but it'd be great if it showed the fund information. It doesn't. So what I was going to suggest, and it's something I picked up on a moment ago, is if you go into transactions, if you did want those ledger year-end postings with the fund information, what you can do. So a good little tip, this one, pop into filter, apply a filter along the lines of, in this case, I've got where number is greater than or equal to number 13. Apply that. So it now just lists the ledger year-end postings. And then if I want that, if I send it across to Excel, it's now got exactly the same information as essentially what was on the year-end report, but I've also got the fund information now. I'll just zoom in so you can see that maybe a little bit clearer. So you can see it's got that fund column now listed against that. So good little tip if you need, if you want more of an understanding of what's actually happened. Now, if we just have a quick look at one of my funds, just so we can have a look at that one, we'll highlight this one into the activity. You'll see we've got the individual transactions that were posted during the session. We've got some ledger year-end, getting tongue-tied now. We've got some ledger year-end postings. So transactions 14 and 16. So essentially they're clearing the balances down from the relevant nominal ledger codes. And then you've got your balancing entry as well. Now, if you haven't, one thing I would maybe encourage you to do as well, if you haven't used the charities module yet, or you are using it, but you want to learn more about it. Remember, you can go via your file menu, you go open, and then you can access the demo data or the practice data. You can enable the charities option within there. You can have a go of these options. Difference between the two, demo data has already got information entered. Practice data, it essentially starts from scratch each time. So you get an option when you're going into the practice data to essentially rebuild it and start again. Really good option for, if you want to track something through from start to finish. Hope that makes sense. So have a go. Default log on, by the way, for those two options, just manager, leave the password blank, but it will prompt you to log in normally. Right, now that brings us to the end of what I'd planned to cover. Obviously, we've still got Tim and Dimi on hand answering your questions. We've probably gone over a little bit more than I thought it was going to take us to run through this session. The session is recorded, so it will be made available to you afterwards today. So you should receive an email, a follow-up email, around about 2 hours time, and it will have the link so you can register for additional webinars, but also if you need a bit of a recap on anything we've covered, that will be available to you as well. We do it at 2 hours rather than 1 hour, as it gives me a chance to prepare the recording and get that hosted and shared with everyone. A little bit of information just before everyone disappears, a little bit about Sage membership. You'll hear more about this in the coming months. Sage memberships brings 3 of our services together. So you've got Sage University, where we host all of our learning and training courses, free to access. Just head along to sageu.com. The Sage City, so that's great for blogs, forums, questions, answers, loads available in Sage City. It's basically our user forum for Sage customers. And then finally, we've got Sage Masterclass. If you've attended any of my webinars recently, you'll have heard me mention a little bit about Masterclass. If you've downloaded a copy of the slides for today via the little link on your toolbar, your link at the bottom of this slide will work as well. So we're taking you across to the Masterclass page. Masterclass is all about almost like online tutorials or webinars from business experts that aren't product related. So we're bringing you advice on things like, in season 1, the videos that are available, finding and keeping great people. So those are available as well. They're all included. Just need to set up a log on to gain access to these. So loads of information. Season 2, can't remember what that will be covering, but those sessions will be start to be available soon as well. But again, you'll start hearing about masterclasses and Sage membership in a bit more detail over the coming months. Now, it's your first webinar with us, or maybe you've come back for some more. Loads of topics coming up. Tomorrow, we'll be running through the VAT return. If anyone wants to see that one and maybe gain a little bit of confidence on the VAT side, then please get yourself signed up. Other sessions, so throughout October, those sessions are now available to book. Charities Part 2 is on there as well, so you can get yourself registered if you are interested in coming along to that one. That will be on, it's Wednesday, the 26th of October at 2 o'clock. So hopefully we'll have Tim and Timmy on hand to answer your questions on that one as well. Haven't asked them yet, but hopefully they'll be able to come along. Right, so loads of topics, year-end, lock dates, tips and tricks, how to get more from your software, keyword trail option, tax codes, departments, discounts. We cover a wide range of topics. If you've got any requests, topics you'd like to see covered, then there will be a little survey pop up as you leave today. If you can take a minute or so just to share any thoughts, ideas, anything of that nature, then that would be greatly appreciated. But I want to quickly take just a moment to thank you from myself, Tim and Timmy, for coming along today. I hope you have enjoyed it and you found it useful and given you a little bit of an insight into the Charities module and some of the features you've got. Remember, there's loads of great information available within our help centre. If you can't find what you're after, or you need a little bit of extra support, again, on the charity side, your queries can be very detailed and very specific to yourself, your own business, then please get in touch with our support team. So as I say, short survey pops up as you leave. Follow-up email you'll get in around about 2 hours time, and it will include the link so that you can register for future webinars, and also hopefully by the time you get that, the recording will be available as well. If you've missed any previous sessions, those recordings are available as well. You can watch those at any time. But otherwise, take care, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you on some future sessions. If anyone has any outstanding questions, what I'll try and do, rather than answer them now, I'll just try and pick them up individually. I'll drop you an email later on this afternoon. But we'll end the webinar at that point. Thanks for coming along, and hopefully we'll see you maybe on part 2 as well. Thank you.